Section 4 of Library of the World's Best Literature, Ancient and Modern, Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mario Pineda. Library of the World's Best Literature, Ancient and Modern, Volume 1, Section 4. Selections from The Man with the Broken Ear by Edmund About, translated by Henry Holt. The Victim. Leon took his bunch of keys and opened the long oak box on which he had been seated. The lid being raised, they saw a great leaden casket which enclosed a magnificent walnut box carefully polished on the outside, lined on the inside with white silk, and padded. The others brought their lamps and candles near, and the colonel of the 23rd of the line appeared as if he were in a chapel illuminated for his lying in state. One would have said that the man was asleep. The perfect preservation of the body attested the paternal care of the murderer. It was truly a remarkable preparation, and would have borne comparison with the finest European mummies described by Vic d'Azyr in 1779 and by the younger Poimorian in 1787. The part best preserved, as is always the case, was the face. All the features had maintained a proud and manly expression. If any old friend of the colonel had been at the opening of the third box, he would have recognized him at first sight. Undoubtedly, the point of the nose was a little sharper, the nostrils less expanded and thinner, and the bridge a little more marked than in the year 1813. The eyelids were thinned, the lips pinched, the corners of the mouth drawn down, the cheek bones too prominent, and the neck visibly shrunken, which exaggerated the prominence of the chin and larynx. But the eyelids were closed without contraction, and the sockets much less hollow than one could have expected. The mouth was not at all distorted, like the mouth of a corpse. The skin was slightly wrinkled, but had not changed color. It had only become a little more transparent, showing after a fashion the color of the tendons, the fat, and the muscles wherever we rested directly upon them. It also had a rosy tint which is not ordinarily seen in embalmed corpses. Dr. Martout explained this anomaly by saying that if the colonel had actually been dried alive, the globules of the blood were not decomposed, but simply collected in the capillary vessels of the skin and subjacent tissues, where they still preserved their proper color, and could be seen more easily than otherwise on account of the semi-transparency of the skin. The uniform had become much too large, as might be readily understood, though it did not seem at a casual glance that the members had become deformed. The hands were dry and angular, but the nails, although a little bent inward toward the root, had preserved all their freshness. The only very noticeable change was the excessive depression of the abdominal walls, which seemed crowded downward to the posterior side. At the right, a slight elevation indicated the place of the liver. A tap of the finger on the various parts of the body produced a sound like that from dry leather. While Leon was pointing out these details to his audience and doing the honors of his mummy, he awkwardly broke off the lower part of the right ear, and a little piece of the colonel remained in his hand. This trifling accident might have passed unnoticed had not Clementine, who followed with visible emotion all the movements of her lover, dropped her candle and uttered a cry of affright. All gathered around her. Leon took her in his arms and carried her to a chair. Monsieur Renaud ran after salts. She was as pale as death, and seemed on the point of fainting. She soon recovered, however, and reassured them all by a charming smile. "Pardon me," she said, "for such a ridiculous exhibition of terror, but what Monsieur Leon was saying to us, and then that figure which seemed sleeping, it appeared to me that the poor man was going to open his mouth and cry out, when he was injured." Leon hastened to close the walnut box, while Monsieur Martout picked up the piece of ear and put it in his pocket. But Clementine, while continuing to smile and make apologies, was overcome by a fresh access of emotion and melted into tears. The engineer threw himself at her feet, poured forth excuses and tender phrases, and did all he could to console her inexplicable grief. Clementine dried her eyes, looked prettier than ever, and sighed fit to break her heart, without knowing why. "Beast that I am," muttered Leon, tearing his hair. "On the day when I see her again after 3 years' absence, I can think of nothing more soul-inspiring than showing her mummies." He launched a kick at the triple coffin of the colonel, saying, "I wish the devil had the confounded colonel." "No!" cried Clémentine, with redoubled energy and emotion. "Do not curse him, Monsieur Leon. He has suffered so much. Ah, poor, unfortunate man!" Mademoiselle Sambucco felt a little ashamed. She made excuses for her niece, and declared that never, since her tenderest childhood, had she manifested such extreme sensitiveness. Clémentine was no sensitive plant. She was not even a romantic schoolgirl. Her youth had not been nourished by Anne Radcliffe. She did not trouble herself about ghosts, and she would go through the house very tranquilly at 10 o'clock at night without a candle. When her mother died, some months before Leon's departure, she did not wish to have anyone share with her the sad satisfaction of watching and praying in the death chamber. "This will teach us," said the aunt, "what staying up after 10 o'clock does. What? It is midnight, within a quarter of an hour. Come, my child, you will recover fast enough after you get to bed. Clementine arose submissively, but at the moment of leaving the laboratory she retraced her steps, and with a caprice more inexplicable than her grief, she absolutely demanded to see the mummy of the colonel again. Her aunt scolded in vain. In spite of the remarks of Mademoiselle Sambuco and all the others present, she reopened the walnut box, knelt down beside the mummy, and kissed it on the forehead. Poor man, said she, rising, how cold he is! Monsieur Léon, promise me that if he is dead, you will have him laid in consecrated ground. As you please, mademoiselle. I intended to send him to the Anthropological Museum, with my father's permission, but you know that we can refuse you nothing. Selections from The Man with the Broken Ear, used by permission of Henry Holt and Company. The Man Without a Country. Forthwith, the colonel marched and opened the windows with a precipitation which upset the gazers among the crowd. People, said he, I have knocked down 100 beggarly pardours, who respect neither sex nor infirmity. For the benefit of those who are not satisfied, I will state that I call myself Colonel Fougas on the 23rd, and Vive l'Empereur! A confused mixture of plaudits, cries, laughs, and jeers answered the unprecedented elocution. Leon Renault hastened out to make apologies to all to whom they were due. He invited a few friends to dine the same evening with the terrible colonel, and of course he did not forget to send a special messenger to Clementine. Fougas, after speaking to the people, returned to his hosts, swinging himself along with a swaggering air, set himself astride a chair, took hold of the ends of his moustache, and said, Well, come, let's talk the supper. I've been sick, then, very sick. That's incredible. I feel entirely well. I am hungry, and moreover, while waiting for dinner, I'll try a glass of your schneck. Madame Renault went out, gave an order, and returned in an instant. But tell me, then, where am I? Resumed the colonel. By this paraphernalia of work, I recognize a disciple of Urania, possibly a friend of Monge and Berthollet. But the cordial friendliness impressed on your countenances proves to me that you are not natives of this land of sauerkraut. Yes, I believe it from the beatings of my heart. Friends, we have the same fatherland. The kindness of your reception, even where there are no other indications, would have satisfied me that you are French. What accidents have brought you so far from your native soil? Children of my country, what tempest has thrown you upon this inhospitable shore? My dear colonel, replied Monsieur Nibor, if you want to become very wise, you will not ask so many questions at once. Allow us the pleasure of instructing you quietly and in order, for you have a great many things to learn. The colonel flushed with anger, and answered sharply, At all events, you are not the man to teach them to me, my little gentleman. A drop of blood which fell on his hand changed the current of his thoughts. Hold on, said he. Am I bleeding? That will amount to nothing. Circulation is re-established, and your broken ear... He quickly carried his hand to his ear and said, It's certainly so, but devil take me if I recollect this accident. I'll make you a little dressing, and in a couple of days there will be no trace of it left. Don't give yourself the trouble, my dear Hippocrates. A pinch of powder is a sovereign cure. Monsieur Nibor set to work to dress the ear in a little less military fashion. During his operations Léon re-entered. Ah, said he to the doctor, you are repairing the harm I did. Founderation! Cried Fougas, escaping from the hands of Monsieur Nibor so as to seize Léon by the collar. Was it you rascal, that hurt my ear? Léon was very good-natured, but his patience failed him. He pushed his man roughly aside. Yes, sir. It was I who tore your ear, in pulling it, and if that little misfortune had not happened to me, it is certain that you would have been today 6 feet underground. It is I who saved your life after buying you with my money when you were not valued at more than 25 louis. It is I who have passed 3 days and 2 nights in cramming charcoal under your boiler. It is my father who gave you the clothes you now have on. You are in our house. Drink the little glass of brandy Gothon just brought you. But for God's sake, give up the habit of calling me rascal, of calling my mother good mother, and of flinging our friends into the street and calling them beggarly pandours. The colonel, all dumbfounded, held out his hand to Léon. Monsieur Renault and the doctor gallantly kissed the hand of Madame Renault, swallowed at a gulp a claret glass filled to the brim with brandy, and said in a subdued voice, Most excellent friends, forget the vagaries of an impulsive but generous soul. To subdue my passions shall hereafter be my law. After conquering all the nations in the universe, it is well to conquer one's self. This said, he submitted his ear to Monsieur Nibor, who finished dressing it. But, said he, summoning up his recollections, they did not shoot me, then? No. And I was frozen to death in the tower? Not quite. Why has my uniform been taken off? I see. I am a prisoner. You are free. Free? Vive l'Empereur! But then there is not a moment to lose. How many leagues is it to Danzig? It is very far. What do you call this chicken coop of town? Fontaine